ACA's Free Thought Library is. There's a bunch of people on the other side of the glass today and probably in the back room and out back. And when it's over, we're going to be feeding them. I heard a rumor that it might be barbecue. We'll find out shortly. But there's a community here that is robust and welcoming and not perfect. And if you're expecting perfection, you're not going to find it anywhere. Perfect is the enemy of the good. Who are we going to next?
Oh, my goodness. How about just...
let me do this one.
Okay.
Murray, welcome back. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for taking my call.
For those who don't recall, Murray called prior to the American Atheist Convention, and we met up at that convention. And also, I know that you worked with some of the folks from like Northern Indiana Atheists and stuff. How are things going?
Good. I really appreciated being at the Atheist Convention. It really made me see that you guys really are a community. And what really struck me is like nobody was telling you what to do or what to think. And that's definitely...
If there were somebody there doing that, they wouldn't get listened to anyway, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's probably one of the biggest. So on occasion, somebody will be like, "Oh, well, you're just another religion, or you're just another cult," and having somebody point out that we're not telling anybody what to do or what to think is helpful.
Well, if anything, we have the opposite problem where there's this. It's a real cat herding exercise to get everybody to do something together.
I've been doing a lot of thinking, and as far back as I can remember, I was in church and I believed in God. And there were times that, like, I'd say, I'd pray and I'd see an answer, or like I was in a really violent robbery. I wasn't shot and I wasn't raped, but pretty much it was pretty bad. I was knocked around, and one point the guy was sitting on me with a gun at my head counting to 3.
Wow.
So he wanted the keys to the safe.
Wow.
And
that's pretty intense.
I remember this went on, it seemed like forever. And the longer it went on, the more violent they became. And I remember thinking, this one time that if I cried, then they would believe me. And I forced myself to cry, and they immediately believed that I didn't have the keys to the safe. Then they proceeded to drag me out of the store with a gun at my head again. But they, let me go. And I thought, I've always believed that was God telling me in the middle of that chaos. And I was pretty much, what is it called when detached? It was like I was going through a
Dissociative? Yeah, dissociation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So
that thought was so clear.
I can certainly understand why people, especially with a history of religious belief, would think, oh, this was God kind of telling me what to do, because that's what you've been told. But the truth is, that sort of reaction is natural and learned. From the time you're a child, you cry. Babies lie. Babies cry, the hunger cry, even when they're not hungry because they want attention. But also we learn stuff. I don't know how many crime dramas you've watched, but I've learned quite a bit from crime dramas about, if somebody's kidnapped, we talk about them as a person and we say their name and these other things. You learn these lessons, even if they're not explicitly taught to you, that when you're in this situation, the best thing you can do is try to make a connection that is going to instill or trigger the empathy in the person who's assaulting you. And as long as you don't have somebody who's incapable of empathy, then you're probably going to end up slightly better off than otherwise. The issue isn't if it was God telling you cry, why didn't God do something else or make it clear that God wanted you to cry? I mean, why on earth would God have you in a situation where you've got a gun to your head and then just say, go ahead, cry?
Right.
I mean, that...
kind of sadistic, right?
Yeah. It reminds me, of things like Tracy has said about, if somebody's going to sexually assault a child and you saw it, you would intervene because we're all decent people. But God doesn't intervene. He just sits up there and says, go ahead, close the door. I'll take care of you later. and allows it to kind of go on. And so while I can certainly understand how you or anybody else would say, at that time, because in my desperation, it doesn't seem like something I would have thought of. It seemed like a message coming to me, and therefore and therefore it's likely from God. One of the things is we're not really good at understanding our brains, and we try to divide things into like conscious and subconscious or unconscious times. We talk about our intuition or the little angels and demons sitting on our shoulder, because sometimes when we're talking to ourselves, it can feel like somebody else is talking, because you can't explain where these thoughts are coming from. You know, it's if I'm trying to solve a problem and I'm just stuck, and all of a sudden I have this spark of intuition and I get the right answer, it is understandable that you might think that that came from somewhere else because it doesn't feel like it came from you. But that's the way our brains work, and all the evidence points to this did come from you. Or all the best evidence, I guess.
Yeah. Can I give another example that I'm
Sure.
kind of struggling with? When I was young and thin, I would hitchhike. And I would always pray that God would give me a safe ride. Well, this one time, this guy pulls over and I get in the car and he starts lecturing me about how dangerous hitchhiking is. And I said, well, I asked God for a safe ride. And he started laughing really loud because he was a pastor of one of the churches. And I think I've always thought that was God.
Why?
Why? I guess because it was such a coincidence.
Yeah. But coincidences happen all the time. And
Yeah.
I just don't see any justification for attributing it to a God. And I've never picked up a hitchhiker. I would never hurt somebody. I'm actually probably a bad person in some regard, because I think one of the reasons I haven't picked up a hitchhiker is because I'm worried about picking up somebody who might potentially hurt me.
Right.
But if you look at the type of people who are likely to pick up hitchhikers, okay, maybe the same reason that you reached out to God to say, give me a safe ride, is the same reason this pastor went ahead and decided to pick up a hitchhiker. And then it's unsurprising that a pastor would talk to somebody about something that was potentially dangerous in their life. Pastors are often good people, but some of them aren't. It's entirely possible that you could have asked God for a good ride, got picked up by a pastor, and still been, assaulted or mistreated, because
Right.
there are pastors that do that too.
Yeah. You hear about them a lot.
And the thing is, if you think that this is, or thought that this was God giving you a message, the one thing I keep harping on is, in what context does that make sense? God's going to put you in this situation where somebody's got a gun to your head and then he's going to tell you to cry. Or you're going to ask God for a safe ride and he's going to make sure you get in a car with a pastor, as if that guarantees safety. Why is it that if God has messages for people and cares about people, he has to be so damn cryptic? Give you a hint of something that maybe it was God telling me this. Why can't it just be obvious? You already believe. It's not like, he has to convince you. It would be like, it'd be like Satan. Satan, if he exists, knows God exists completely. So why would God have to send Satan hints instead of just saying, nope, here's the way things are? This hide and go seek God, it just doesn't make sense. God's got a message for me, but he's going to give it to me in a dream. God's got a message for me, but he's going to kind of whisper in my ear something that I'm not quite sure was him. How could you be not quite sure?
I think people like to be part of stories, right? Part of the drama. And I think that religions give you these stories and these things, and one of the things that Christianity does is it sort of makes you part of it, right? You are going to be saved, just be humble, your reward is coming, and these sorts of things. And I just see this as part of that also, that you're going to get a message from God somehow because you're important.
Yeah.
I'm having it's like I understand, and I guess I'm believing a lot of the things that I'm hearing with the Atheist Experience and Seth Andrews and some of the others, and Aaron Robb, and then I think, okay, I've got to that reframes my whole life.
Yes.
And I'm really struggling with that.
Yeah. And
you're not alone.
So does everybody else in this transition. It's very few people who are like, on Monday I believed in God, and on Tuesday I was done with it, and I'm completely better and don't have any baggage.
Oh, it's a process for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have some friends or some community you can reach out to?
No, not really.
Okay. That's something you might try to do. Even if it's an online forum, a lot of folks will have gone through similar things, and it's nice to have some camaraderie there.
And also there were resources that I put you in touch with while we were at the convention.
I still have those.
Yep, and I would encourage you to reach out to them. RFR and the Psychotherapist Project and Secular Women as well.
Going to a convention's good because you can meet people. I've made friends all across the United States and internationally that way.
Do you think that should be my next step?
Well, conventions are a little expensive. You might try to find a local group and get more involved locally.
It's one of those things where just having anybody around to talk to is going to be a really good first step, because sitting there trying to deal with all this stuff on your own, you might find your way out after a time, but I really, we're here to build communities because we're convinced that having a community is one of the most important things for people who have found their way for your religion and feel ostracized and alone. It's also an important step towards atheist or secular normalcy, that once people realize, oh yeah, you guys are part of that atheist group down the street, and you do these things, or you work with atheists helping the homeless, or whatever outreach things. Maybe you just sit around and drink and bash religion if that's the thing that's working.
Well, that sounds good, actually.
There you go. Then I would recommend you see if there's a Skeptics in the Pub in your neighborhood, because drinking and bashing religion is a frequent event at some of those things. But anyway, Mary, we've got to go. I've got a bunch of other callers I want to try to get to, but I really appreciate you touching base with us, and feel free to hit us up again when you have more questions or concern, and try to find some people in your community. And Don's right. If you can't find anybody that you can meet up with in person, there are online resources. And I'd recommend contacting Recovering from Religion, because they have counselors that can direct you to that type of stuff. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking my